please record permission from the meeting host. Okay, how do I request that?
Oh, wait, the little record button just showed up. Okay.
On mine too.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start this then and see if it's working. Okay, we may or may not have this recorded, so I guess that's just the way it's going to go. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the new year and all the excitement that's happening. And I want to let you all know that you can let your people know that I'm doing the doctor's call tomorrow night, so it'll be exceptional as always. And that's really just what I wanted to start out with. I will post that, and you can let your coaches and your clients know. Now, what I wanted to go over tonight is something that many of you who heard that guy talk that went from client to ED in 27 days, heard him say something, and he said the biggest gap is the gap between knowing and doing. And that intrigued me a little bit because I didn't necessarily believe that. So what I did is I wanted to research that a little bit, and I wanted to see if in fact I felt like that was true, because I know, and many of you know, that we all at times have gone through sequences where our action has sort of trailed what we ordinarily would like for it to be. And yet many of us also know that if we do, that a lot more gets done and a lot more productive things gets done. So if anyone has any great ideas, feel free to either stop me or at the end, definitely make a comment, make some notes, because this is what I learned and the conclusions that I've come to based upon what I've read, what I believe, and what I've experienced. So there may be a simple answer, and I believe there is. And I also believe that there's not a gap between knowing and doing, but what there is there's a line. And the question is not how to bridge the gap, in my opinion, but how to cross that line. And it's more of an issue of personal management than personal knowledge or personality. So some people confabulate, oh, well, if I had his or her personality, it would be easy for me. Or, oh, if I knew what this one knew, or if I knew what that one knew, or if I knew just a little bit more, or if I just had the secret technique that the Millers used, or the secret technique that Amber used, or whatever, that would make it happen. But I read something the other day that I thought was interesting, and understand how this is coming out, because it might be perceived in ways other than I understand it. And what it said was that two things that would be of great value would be if rich people knew how poor people lived, and if poor people knew how rich people worked. And I thought that was interesting, because there is somewhat of a cognitive disconnect and belief and confabulation of what one group believes of another. So what are some stumbling blocks that keep people from moving across that line from knowledge to action? Because really, I think most of you, in fact, certainly everyone that I see on this call, has plenty of knowledge to be able to go executive director, national director, global director, and probably even presidential executive director. Or, if not right now, certainly you have the knowledge to move you into the action that would create those things to happen in your lives. So one of the stumbling blocks is confidence. And so that usually can be developed through personal development. Another thing that is a stumbling block for many people is commitment. And really, what is commitment other than the issue of really knowing what you want? But unfortunately, one of the things that I find is one of the biggest stumbling blocks is rationalizing your actions, or more appropriately, or more accurately, rationalizing your inaction. And we'll cover a little bit about what I mean by that later. But really, lack of confidence in many ways is just insecurity about the future And for a person who lacks confidence, all they really need to do is ask for help. And the alternative action to asking for help is doing nothing. Now, this is another interesting thing that I'm sure all of you will agree with who have experienced this, is that more knowledge is acquired by doing than by knowing. So you can read, has anyone out there ever played baseball or any sports? Okay, if you've ever played any sports, you know that you can read about what to do and you can read about how to do it, but the only way you get better is by doing it. And so people tend to do the same thing in this business. Well, that didn't work, so I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, if you were on a basketball court and you threw it at the basket with one hand with your eyes closed and you said that didn't work, you wouldn't say, well, that didn't work, I'm not doing it anymore. Or if you went to bat and you held the bat backwards, or you swung but you knew your eye wasn't on the ball, you wouldn't say, well, I'm never going to do that again. Well, you would say, I'm never going to do that again. You wouldn't say, I'm never going to get to bat again, or I'm never going to shoot the basket again. So these are things that we need to realize is it's the action that helps us learn. And talking is not a substitute for action. What you're going to do, what you're going to plan to do, what you know you should do, what you feel like doing mean nothing. And you probably, some of you have heard Dan Bell say this, is that what a person does, I'm sure he quoted someone else on this, but what a person does speaks so loudly that you can't even hear what they're saying. And you'll notice this sometimes with politicians. Someone will ask them a question and they'll say, absolutely. So figure out what's standing between you and your goals, and make sure your goals are SMART goals. And we've talked about this before. SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time. And if you do, and if you're really honest with yourself, and I have to be honest with you guys, I've really started this in January, like way more than I used to. And it works. You set the goals, you look at them every day. What you don't accomplish one day, I highlight it and I make sure that that's what I do first the next day. That's the person I call first the next day. I try not to rationalize and say, oh, well, I won't have time to talk to them because I'm going to be in the car only for 5 more minutes, so what I'll do is I'll call them later. I say, no, I have to call them first. If I have to sit in the car for 10 minutes before I go into my next appointment or wherever I'm going, I'm going to do that. So it is important to be honest with yourself. And this was interesting. What a study showed, and of course you know that when someone says studies show, that increases the credibility of it way, way much. So studies show that improved performance, which we'll just, for our business, we'll say increased personal volume, increased group volume, depends more on implementing what you know to do than on learning a new or better way. Is there anyone that would disagree with that? Well, you're all muted, so it would be hard for you to say. So if you think about what you want, what your primary goal is, and I know a lot of people, a lot of us, will sometimes, I don't have time to set my goals for the week because I need to do this, 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 and this. Forget it. You're going to be so much more productive if you set out each day knowing what you're going to do that day. And I heard Terry Miller say it one way, and I heard Dan say it another way. The way Dan said it was really kind of like someone putting a knife in you and kind of swirling it around. He said that if you don't plan much for your day or your week or your year, don't expect much for your business. So if you don't plan for your business, don't expect much for it. So what's the one thing that'll make the difference? And let that be automatic. If for one of you it's calls, another one it might be talking to people that you feel uncomfortable talking with in person. Whatever it is, just do it. Practice it. Recognize that you have to do in order to learn. So what would an example of SMART goals be? Might be something specific would be, okay, I'm going to get 10 new clients, or I'm going to get 4 more coaches this month. Okay, that's specific. Not, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get as many new coaches on my team as I can. What does that mean? If you don't do anything, then 0 is as much as you can. So be smart, be specific, and of course those are measurable goals because they're numbers, and they should be achievable. If you're somebody who only talks to 10 people a week and you never ask for referrals, don't expect 50 more clients, but you might expect 10. If you really don't share the business much, then 10 new coaches would be totally unrealistic, but 2 might be realistic. So those are achievable, and the difference between achievable and realistic is you can achieve a new executive director, but realistic would be you can't achieve that in 1 week. Okay, so there's some overlap between achievable and realistic, and time should be realistic. So do you guys have enough knowledge? And I would say absolutely yes. Unless somebody's on the line and feels like they don't, it's very simple. Get with your mentorship leader and go over things, because I can guarantee you that everyone on this call has enough knowledge to go executive director and global. It's as simple as that. And you might think, oh, well, no, I really don't. But that's a concept that you have to carry around. That's a rationalization that you're putting upon yourself. That's a fear that you're not letting go of. So if you let go of those things and just put it into action and say, let's say, for instance, you're a regional. And I say, you definitely go global by convention. You might think, well, that's no way. But the answer is absolutely you can, but it takes a certain amount of work. So it depends on what do you want, not what do I think you can do. What do you want? What are you willing to give up to get it? What are you willing to do to get it? And this is another thing that I have found has been very valuable to me. At the beginning of each day, I say, okay, what can I do to move my business forward today? And it might not be the same thing yesterday as it was today. So what can I do to move my business forward today? I wait and I plan the day, but then I start doing something that I didn't used to do. And that's at the end of the day, I evaluate, how did I do?
Yep.
Was I honest with myself? Was I,
okay.
Did I take action? Did I, how much of my sheet did I get through? How many calls did I make? Did I leave text messages? And if I did, am I going to get back to those people? Or am I just going to rationalize, well, they'll get back to me if they're serious? So I think it's real important to always err on the side of business action. And this is an easy concept for me because in surgery, there's 2 kinds of errors a person can make. They can make errors of omission and they can make errors of commission. And if you're a regular medical doctor, not a surgeon, it's a lot more okay to make errors of omission than commission. But as surgeons, we always said, your errors need to be errors of commission. In other words, if you don't operate on somebody and they die, that's a whole lot worse than if you operate on them, the operation's a success, and they still die. because at least you gave them a chance. So visualize what you can do with your business when you make those calls. What are you really doing? Are you really just making calls? Are you really just looking for volume? Or are you maybe saving someone's life? Are you maybe saving someone's family? And I think for me, I start to try and think in those terms, and that kind of spurs me into action more. If I look and I say, well, oh, you know, this person, oh, I don't know, I already called them 2 or 3 times, and I say, well, yeah, but that person told me they are sick of working so hard and they want to generate more income because they want to go on more mission trips. Why would I not call them? I'm keeping them from what they desire when I have the answer. And action definitely does conquer fear. So most of you are old enough to remember the Back to the Future movies. And there was a scene there where they talked about the 2 different futures. You know, there was the one future that was already set, and then there was the other future that they could change. And so if you think about what your 2 different futures would be like with and without the action, and not the action over a long period of time, but the action in one day, the action that day. And you'll realize that then when an emergency occurs or when something happens and you just really can't make the calls or you can't be there to do whatever it is you thought you were going to do, it doesn't hurt as badly because you've been working hard up until those emergencies.
Yes.
There's a lot of wisdom out there. I would love to hear from you guys. If anyone has experienced that move from saying, okay, I'm sick of not being where I want to be. I know that I know that I know. I'm just doing this thing, and I don't care about anything else. I don't care about the no's. I don't care about what someone else think. I don't care about any of that stuff. The lawn can wait. The dishes can wait. I'm going to get the calls done first. Has anyone experienced that or would like to be experiencing that, I guess, really? I'd love to hear from you guys. We've got some high-level people here today.
Well, I'll jump in. This is Neva. Yes, I have experienced it, but I will say it can come and go. So just like the first time you've got to get that feeling, you got to hang on to it because it'll go. And it is great when you feel that way. And there's a book that Beth Dillaha told me about over the holidays, and it's a real easy read, and I read it. It's called Get to Know, or Get the No's. Oh, now I forget what it's called, but it's basically you're collecting no's, whereas all we talk about, we've been collecting yeses, and basically it's just keep going. You're collecting no's, but guess what? You know, you collect enough no's, you get to some yeses, and you get through that. And that has helped me at times, just thinking of it that way.
Well, that's a great point, Neva, because I have been telling people that from the beginning. I realized one day, if you want to get 100 yeses, go out and try to get 10,000 no's.
Yep.
Because you won't be able to get that many by the time you get your 100 yeses. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say this, that you still have to do it right. It's not just, right, let me go get no's.
Right.
Because we did have someone at a meeting one time say this, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm going out and I'm telling people, here's my card. I need to give my card to 20 people a day to see if they'll come into business with me. Can I give this to you? And she said she was giving out like 20 a day and nobody was getting into business with her. Well, I would hardly call that aiming to stay, because that's not awakening the intrinsic motivation in anyone. So you still, obviously, and I know that you know that, Neva, but I think it bears repeating that, yes, understand that you have to go through labor pains in order to see the smiling face of that little baby. But it's well worth it when it's done. Anyone else? Things that have helped you overcome obstacles or fears or the resistance to action. Okay, then I'm going to leave you with one last thought. And I don't remember which law, but it's one of the laws of thermodynamics. And it's entropy. Who knows what entropy is? Okay. I know that some of you do, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Entropy is this. A body at rest has a tendency to stay at rest, and a body in motion has a tendency to stay in motion. So the point there is that once you get started, it's a lot easier than starting, stopping, starting, stopping. So if you start and you keep going and you look for the momentum, it'll be a lot easier to find it. And it'll be a lot more difficult to stop it once the momentum gets going. Not that you'd want to. Okay. Anything else? If not, I guess, Elizabeth, I think the little record button came up when you started recording. So you will get it as a an MP4 on your computer, and you can
Good
either
luck to us all.
maybe we can screen share later, and I can show you how to do that.
Okay. Do I need to stop the recording?
Yes, please.
How? Click on the button?
Yes.
Yeah, that didn't do anything.
I think it's mine. Let me try.
Okay.